So, hello everybody. Welcome to the Ideas Seminar Series. It is my great pleasure to introduce you to Binxuan Huang, who will be speaking to us today about his research on looking at Twitter data. Specifically, he'll be speaking about fake news and misinformation on Twitter during the new COVID outbreak. Binxuan is to be a recent graduate. He'll be graduating in May with his PhD with expertise in network science, machine learning, and more generally speaking, in data science. With that being said, I will turn it over to Ben, who will describe the work. Go ahead.
Thanks, Dr. Carly. So, hello everyone. Today I'm going to present our recent research finding on the COVID-19 outbreak on Twitter. And more specifically, I will talk about the fake news and the misinformation spreading during this event. So, as a short background, as we all know, there is an outbreak of a disease caused by a novel coronavirus in the early of 2020. And the World Health Organization declared this outbreak a public health emergency on January 30, 2020. And this disease first starts from Wuhan, China, and currently it hits Europe and the United States very heavily. And as of April 27, there are more than 3 million confirmed cases around the world. And during this specific event, there's a lot of conversation going on Twitter, and among them, fake news and also misinformation also appeared. So people are discussing this event on Twitter, and there are a lot of conversations going on. Some users are sharing some scientific facts on Twitter about this event, about this disease. Like in this case, this user shared some coronavirus symptoms, and also people are sharing their personal experiments when got infected by this disease. And also there's some criticizing toward those local governments, and there are even some users trying to make some satire jokes about this disease. And among all those regular discussions, there are also some fake news and misinformations emerged during the public discussions. So a very popular misinformation is about the origin of this disease. So many people suspect it is a bioweapon engineered in a research lab. So this picture shows this user shared this user claimed that this disease was engineered by scientists in a lab, and it also mentioned news URLs that provide some evidence, and also there are some users trying to sharing some misinformation stories about preventive methods and the cures of this disease. So in the second picture, I show a user state that the sesame oil can be helpful for preventing. And also there are some other users mentioned other potential preventive methods such as basil and garlic in the third tweet. So this is only just a very few of them, and there are much more going on Twitter. And during those pandemic, trusting health authorities is critical for prevention, and such misinformation is damaging and even be deadly. So in our research, we want to know who is spreading those misinformation and who is not. We also want to know where misinformation comes from and how it spreads globally. So more specifically, we have 4 research questions in mind. The first one is who are the sources of influential tweets during this event, and who are talking about fake news and misinformation, and how does the conversation around misinformation distribute geographically, and does the fake news distribute the same as real news? And the last, we also want to know how does misinformation spread internationally. And to learn from Twitter, we start to monitor the conversation on Twitter as early as January 29, and we search tweets that contain certain keywords related to COVID-19 in real time. So the keywords we selected include coronavirus, NCOV, COVID-19, and up until March 4th, there are more than 67 million tweets collected, and there are more than 12 million users involved in this discussion during this time period. So in this figure, I show the number of tweets and the users per day during our collection with the red lines, and we also plotted the number of confirmed patients inside China as well as outside China using the blue lines. As you can see, when the disease gradually got controlled inside China, we can see the number of confirmed patients inside China slowly decreased at first, and in the same time, the discussion volume also decreased. But when the disease starts to spread to globally, starting from February 20, we can see the confirmed patients outside of China gradually increase, and so as the discussion volume. The number of users and the number of tweets increased a lot after February 20, and there are much more happening right now. And in this study, we only show the results based on the time period between January 29 and March 4th. And we collected the timelines and the following types for those 12 million users and predict their social identities, their locations, and as well as their political orientations. For the social identities, we define 7 identity categories on Twitter. They are news media, individual news reporter, government official, celebrity, sports company, and regular users. And for political orientation system, we label users either as liberal or conservative, and the location is their country level location. And in our first research question, we are interested in who are the source users of those influential tweets. Here we define those highly retweeted tweets as influential tweets. Among those 12 million users, we extracted 5 million users who mainly tweet in English and predict their social identities based on their timeline and the following types. Among all the English-speaking populations, more than 95% of them are labeled as regular users, and there's about 1% news agency and 1% news reporters, and 1% of them are labeled as government officials. And in this figure, I shows the identity distribution among those top influential tweets. Here in the leftmost bar chart, which I show the identity distribution of those top 10,000 influential tweets, and the ranking decreased from the left to right. So as we can see, among those top 10,000 influential tweets, about 48% of them are sent by regular users, and about 26% of them are sent by news agencies, and about 12% of them are sent by news individual reporters. So even though they are only less than 5% of those official accounts, they actually contributed more than 50% of those top 10,000 influential tweets. So as expected, for those official accounts, they posted a lot of those influential tweets, and the regular users are more likely to be involved in those less influential tweets. However, if we further look at the most influential tweets, we can see that actually regular users also contribute a lot of those influential tweets. So in this left figure, I show the identity distributions for the top 2,000 tweets, and the leftmost bar chart shows the identity distribution of those top 100 tweets. So among those top 100 tweets, 90% of them are sent by regular users, and the ratio is much higher than the picture we showed before. So a short answer to the first research question is that generally news agency, news reporters, government officials, they posted many influential tweets, but for the most influential one, they are more likely to be initiated by regular users. And in our second research question, we are also interested in who are talking about fake news and misinformation. And we adopted the same definition used by some previous research. So they define the fake news that have some flawed editorial process. And there are three lists of fake news sites compiled by one previous work, and they are black sites, red sites, and orange sites. For the black sites, they are sites mainly publish exclusively fabricated stories, and for the red sites, they are sites with a flawed editorial process, and for the orange sites, those are the sites that annotators were less certain about the falsehoods came from the editorial process. And we also add a list of trusted news for comparison, and that is the real news sites. And for the misinformation stories, we manually examine the 5 popular misinformations, and 4 of them are talking about potential cures for this disease. They are garlic, sesame oil, bleach, and the chlorine dioxide. And the last misinformation is about the conspiracy that the disease is a bioweapon developed at a biological lab. And we extracted the tweets either have fake news URLs or misinformation keywords in our dataset. So in this table, we show the number of tweets both mentioning fake news URLs and the misinformation. So as you can see in this table, a lot of fake news sites are mentioned bioweapon keywords. So for the black news, 92 of them have a bioweapon keywords, and for the red news, more than 4,000 of them mention bioweapon, and but for the real news, the percentage is much less. About 1,000 of them, about 1,000 of tweets mentioning real news also mentioned bioweapon, but the percentage is only about 0.1%. And for other misinformation stories, we can see that for the fake news sites, they are rarely mentioned those secure stories, while for the real news, there are few of them mentioned it, but they are mainly trying to clarify those misinformation. And we first want to know who are the sources of those tweets mentioning those fake news. And this table shows the source users' identity distribution of tweets mentioning fake news URLs. So as we can see, for the tweets mentioning black news sites, about 81% of them are initiated by regular users. And for the red news and for the orange news, almost 90% of them are posted by regular users. So compared to the real news sites, the percentage for real news sites is much less. They are less than 80% of those real news tweets mentioning real news are initiated by regular users. And also, if we look at other official accounts, government official company and news reporters, most of them are mentioning real news instead of black or red or orange. For the real news sites, 2% 2% of them and 1% of them and 7% of them are posted by government company and the news reporters, while for the other 3 types, only very few of them are posted by those official accounts. So this table shows that those official accounts have better discriminative power than those regular users. And we also have the same table, but showing the identity distribution of source users talking about misinformation. So in this table, we show the identity distribution of tweets talking misinformation. And the identity distribution for different misinformation vary case by case. So in the bioweapon and bleach case, a lot of tweets mentioning those misinformation are posted by regular users, while for the chlorine dioxide, garlic, and sesame, about 80% of them are sent by regular users. and a lot of them are actually posted by news agency and the government official, and that is because those official accounts are trying to clarify those cure stories. And we also studied what's the political ideology of users who mentioned the fake news and also misinformation. This bar chart shows the ideology of users who sharing fake news and also who retweeting those fake news. So we can see that in the left part, we show the percentage of conservative users among those users who posting those news tweets. And as we can see, more than 60% of those users are labeled as conservative users who sharing fake news sites, while for the users sharing real news and also as well as all the users, the percentage of conservative users is only about 33, which is much less than those fake news sites. And this shows that there are a much higher percentage of conservative users involved in the discussion about fake news. And this finding is also consistent with some previous study. And we also studied the same analysis, but on the misinformation stories. Here we can see that for the cure stories, most of them are more popular in the liberal users, except for the chlorine dioxide. So for the bleach garlic and sashimi, the percentage of conservative users among saucy users are all less than 40%, while for the chlorine dioxide, the percentage is about 70%. So interestingly, essentially chlorine dioxide is one kind of bleach. After switching the terms from bleach to chlorine dioxide, the population distribution changed a lot. And for the bioweapon conspiracy, most of the users who tweeting or retweeting those tweets, those misinformation are labeled as conservative. So generally, conservative users are more likely to be involved in the conspiracy theory. And that's for our second research question. And in our third research question, we are interested in how the conversation around misinformation distributed geographically. So in this table, we listed the number of English users with fake news URLs in the second column, and also the number of English users sharing real news sites in the third column, and the total number of English users for each country in the fourth column. So in the last column, we normalize the number of users who sharing fake news sites by the number of total population in each country. So as we can see, generally, for the users who sharing fake news, the majority of them are from United States, followed by United Kingdom and Canada. And this is maybe due to our keywords are mainly constrained in English, so those English-speaking countries stands out. But if we further look at the normalized number, which is the percentage of all the source users sharing fake news, we can see that the percentage of users in United States are much higher. So about 2.3% of English speaker source users in United States have at least posted one fake news site, and the percentage is also very high in Canada, and both of them are much higher than the average number as well as the remaining countries. And also we have the similar table, but for the retweeters. So as we can see that so in the second column, we have the number of English retweeters who retweets tweets mentioning fake news sites, and also English retweeters of real news sites. And then the fourth column, we have the total number of English retweeters. And the last column is the normalized number for for the percentage of English retweeters sharing fake news sites. Again, we can see that United States, United Kingdom, and Canada are three majority countries share retweeting those fake news URLs. But if we further look at the normalized number, the percentage for United States and Canada is both very high. They are both higher than the average number. So this again shows that the population distribution of users sharing fake news are very different from the underlying population. And there are higher users retweeting fake news from United States and Canada. And we also have a similar table for the misinformation stories. And in the left table, we show the number of English source users sharing misinformation stories. And in the third column, we show the total number of source users in each country. And again, the last column is the normalized number. And as we can see, for United States, about 23,000 of English-speaking users have shared one misinformation stories, and they are among all the users who sharing misinformation. 63% of them are from United States, and which is the percentage is higher than the underlying population percentage. And if we look at the percentage of misinformation of users sharing misinformation per country, then we can see the percentage of there are about 2% of users from United States have at least posted a tweet mentioning misinformation keywords, and also about 4.5% of English retweeters have at least retweeted tweets mentioning misinformation stories. And both numbers are higher than the average number. Another thing I want to note is that is about Hong Kong. You can see that about 2.8 and 7.7% of those English source users and the English retweeters from Hong Kong at least tweet and retweet misinformation stories. And both numbers are significantly higher than the average number and even higher than the number in United States. And most of them are actually tweeting about the bioweapon conspiracy. And this is maybe due to the recent political conflict between Hong Kong and mainland China. And as we have seen before, the country distribution of users sharing fake news and is very different from users sharing real news, and also different from the underlying population. To further measure the difference, we use the KL divergence to measure the distance between different geographical distribution. So in this figure, we show the KL divergence between the country distribution of English users sharing certain news URLs to the country distribution of all the English speakers. So for example, the distance from the South users sharing Black news sites to the English speakers is about 0.3, while the distance from users sharing real news sites to the English speakers is about 0.08, which is much less than those users sharing fake news sites. So this bar chart shows that users posting black, red, and orange news, they diverge a lot from the underlying English-speaking population. And we also compute the same KL divergence for the misinformation stories. So here we can see that the bioweapon and the bleach the users sharing those two stories are very close to the underlying population. The distance from the users sharing bioweapon to the underlying English-speaking population is about 0.06, while the distance of users sharing chlorine dioxide and users sharing garlic and users sharing sesame oil stories are very different from the underlying population. So So that's our third research question. And in our fourth research question, we are interested in how does misinformation spread inter countries. So more specifically, we would like to know that misinformation and the fake news are constrained in the source country or not. So this pie chart shows the percentage of retweets between countries for each type of news. So it is calculated as the number of retweets spreading towards foreign countries divided by the total number of retweets. The higher of the ratio means that the more likely of a tweet is to be spread to a foreign country. So as shown in this table, for the black news and the red news, we can see that there are only about 6% and 10% of those fake news sites are spreading to different countries. While for the real news, the percentage is much higher. About 27% of those tweets mentioned in real news are spreaded to a foreign country. So this shows that those real news are more likely to be transmitted to foreign countries, and those fake news sites they are mostly constrained inside the original countries. And as a result, those real news are spreading globally with high country diversity. Here we use the entropy of those country distribution to measure the diversity. The higher of the entropy means that the more diverse of the country distribution. So if one misinformation story or fake news sites only spreading to one certain country, then the diversity will be very low. So if one misinformation story spread to the global world, then the diversity would be very high. So as a result, you can see that for the country distribution of retweeters sharing black news and the red news, the diversity is very low when compared to those orange sites and real news sites. And also we have the similar analysis for the misinformation stories. Here we show the inter-country retweet rate for those misinformation stories. And for the garlic and sesame, we can see that about 47% of those retweets for garlic is transmitted to a foreign country. And for the sesame oil, about 70% of those tweets mentioning sesame oil is transmitted to a foreign country. So it is more likely for those two misinformation stories shared to be spread to a foreign country, followed by bioweapon, bleach, and chlorine dioxide. And for the bioweapon and the bleach and the chlorine dioxide, they are mainly constrained in the source country. And as a result, we can see that the country diversity of those misinformation about garlic and sesame oil, they are very high. They are very close to all the tweets. And for the bioweapon and bleach and garlic, because they are mostly constrained in the source country, the country diversity is very low for them. So this means that they are mostly talked by certain countries. And we also show the information flow between countries. And in each figure, in the left of each figure, that is the source country, and in the right of each figure is the target country. So the width of the information flow is proportional to the percentage of retweets between two countries among all the inter-country retweets. So as you can see, generally for all the English tweets, United States plays an important role in the inter-country retweets. About 36% of those inter-country retweets are originated from United States, and there are countries like England, India, Canada. They are retweeting tweets from United States. However, the situation of the bioweapon case becomes more extreme. About 57% of those retweets are mentioning bioweapon originated from United States, and Canada, England, Hong Kong, they are retweeting those tweets mentioning bioweapon from United States. However, in the case of sesame oil, the situation changed a lot. There are more than 50% of those international retweets are originated from Switzerland, and that is because Switzerland is where WHO located at. So a lot of those foreign users are retweeting those tweets from WHO. So this shows that those health organizations really plays an important role in this event, and the global users are listening to those health agents and retweeting their retweets. So as a conclusion, we have several major findings in this study. So we first find out that generally news media, government officials, and news reporters, they posted a lot of influential tweets during this event. However, the most influential tweets are still more likely to be written by regular users. And we also find out that there's higher percentage of regular users tweeting those fake news than real news. And the conservative users are also more likely to be involved in the conversation of fake news and the bioweapon conspiracy. And thirdly, we find out that the country distribution of fake news sites differs a lot from the real news sites. There's a higher proportion of users sharing fake news are from United States. And lastly, we also show that those fake news are more likely to be constrained in the source country. And as a result, those tweets mentioning fake news are spreading with less country diversity. And I also want to mention that there are some potential limitations in this study. The first and the most significant one is the language bias, because our search terms, that is, our search terms are mainly constrained in English. So the search terms we selected are coronavirus, COVID-19, and also NCOV. So they are probably mainly used by English-speaking users. So potentially there may be more discussions about this event, and some countries, users from some other countries like China or Japan or Korea, they may use their own language. And similarly, the misinformation stories and also the fake news, they are mainly written in English. So there may be other stories, and also maybe same stories, but written in other language, spreading in Twitter, so which are not captured in this study. And secondly, in this study, we have not clarified whether those tweets mentioning fake news and misinformation are trying to promote or clarify those misinformations. And the last I want to mention is that is about the political orientation prediction. So because as we know, the political ideology system is different is different globally. So users considered as conservative users may be labeled as may be considered as liberal in other countries. So because we want to we want to have a consistent evaluation of the political ideology of global users. So we use a political orientation prediction system that is mainly trained on users in United States. So the political prediction results should be interpreted under the current political system in United States. And that's what I want to share with you. And I'm welcome to any suggestions and comments. Thanks for your listening and attention.
Hi, thank you, Ben, for a very nice presentation. I just have two quick questions about the methodology. So I understand that you classify the political orientation based on political orientation prediction system that was built for US data. So can you please elaborate on this method, because I'm not familiar with? And the second question is about the geographic location. Most of the Twitters, they don't mention their location. So what did you do about missing data related to location? And I believe that you took the geolocation rather than the stated location of the users. So can you please elaborate also more on how you classified the location of the users?
Yes, that's a great question. So first of all, the political orientation system, we with the machine learning system is based on the user's timeline as well as their following ties. So we collect their timelines and the following ties for all the users involved in the discussion, and then predict their ideology based on those information. And the model is trained on our previous collected users. And we first label them based on whether they only follow liberal parties or conservative politicians. And after we get labels, then we have a machine learning system that is based on the content as well as their following ties.
Okay, so it's a model that you built. It's not a model that is out there to use, right? It's a model that you built at Canoe.
Yes, that's what we built in our previous study.
Okay, great, thank you.
And for the location one, actually, yeah, I think the situation for location is slightly different. As you mentioned, there are some users who already used geotags before. And in our timeline collections, there's actually less than 10% of those users have used geotags. So if one user has used the geotags before, then we just use this geotag as their ground truth location. But if one user haven't used geotags in their timeline, then we predict their locations based on their tweets as well as their profile. And this is another location prediction system we built before. Does
Great.
that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Binxuan, could you speak about your results relating to bleach and to sesame oil and how different they were? Do you think that those results would transfer or would be similar for other types of disinformation regarding preventions and cures?
I think there are slightly difference between bleach and garlic and sesame oil. For the bleach case, because the majority of users do not believe in the bleach case, and they are just trying to make jokes about this case. So that caused this story is spreading among users among regular users very popular. While for the garlic and the sesame oil, and it looks to some extent it looks very true for some users, and so those type of users really believe these two stories, and so that is also caused that some news agency and health agency posting clarifying tweets about garlic and sesame oil.
Thank you.
Yes, I have a question. This is Lisa Shirk. Thank you very much for your presentation. I was part of another group of researchers talking about disinformation and these potential cures or these fake news stories about different foods. And in that discussion, it was vitamin C and bleach. And for me, these are different kinds of disinformation because bleach is deadly, whereas vitamin C is not deadly, and neither is garlic or sesame oil. And there was sort of a confusion in the other discussion of researchers between sort of more mild forms of disinformation that they may not be cures, there's no evidence, there's no science behind some of these things, but they're not going to hurt you, whereas bleach definitely will. So It's almost like we need a better way of gradating the types of disinformation and the levels of harm that can come from them. And then the other distinction in that other conversation was vitamin C isn't supposed to cure it. The disinformation about it was that it will boost your immunity, and the science is iffy on that. So it's, anyway, I just wanted to bring up, did you all discuss these sort of levels of harm in terms of disinformation, types of disinformation?
I think it's it's a great suggestions. Currently we haven't discriminated different disinformation and misinformation, but I think it's a really good way to at least divide it into damaging or deadly misinformation versus those not harm misinformation.
So Lisa, in a follow-on paper to this work, we actually are discriminating between different classes of disinformation, and do no harm is one of the lines, as is conspiracy and political.
Okay, great. That sounds good.
There are no more questions. I want to invite you all to join us again next week. Next week, our speaker is Sumit Kumar, who will be talking about social media analytics around stance formation, or stance mining, and he'll give examples in that from a variety of different things, including some from coronavirus as well. And for those of you who don't know what stance is more like the general opinion of at the kind of group level toward a topic. So you tend to believe in climate change, or you don't believe in climate change would be an example. So it's not just, so it goes well beyond sentiment in that respect. So please join us again next week. And for those of you who are coming from the CMU group, keep sending suggestions for speakers to me. Thank you.